Today, we're diving into a really fascinating mystery from the world of elite sports. It's almost like a cold case, the slow, methodical disappearance of one of table tennis's most unique and artistic playing styles.
Okay, so to get started, we need to meet our victim, so to speak, the defensive chopper. Now, this isn't your typical high-speed, aggressive player. No, this is a strategist, a true master of spin. An artist who basically paints the table with these grueling, elegant defensive shots. And at the top level of the men's game, they've pretty much become an endangered species.
So, what exactly is a chopper? Well, picture a player standing way back, maybe several meters behind the table. They're soaking up these ferocious attacks and sending the ball back with just immense backspin. Their whole game is about attrition, wearing their opponent down, frustrating them until they finally make a mistake. It's a game of patience, deception, and believe me, incredible physical endurance.
What's wild is that this style used to be a total fixture in elite competition. It produced world champions, legends of the sport. And that brings us to the big question for our investigation today. If this style was so effective back then, where did they all go? Let's start by looking at the evidence. If you go back to the early 80s, this defensive style was a real force to be reckoned with. I mean, 8 choppers in the top 50. That meant you had a pretty good chance of running into this unique challenge at any major tournament. They were a huge part of the sport's strategic mix.
Okay, now let's fast forward to today. That number? It has absolutely cratered. We're talking fewer than 2 defenders in the entire top 100 of the men's game. This isn't just a slight decline, it's a near total extinction from the elite level. The drop-off is just staggering. And this chart just makes it even clearer. When you look at world championship medals, back in the 60s and 70s, defenders were consistently on the podium. But you can see how the numbers just dwindle, decade by decade, until they pretty much hit zero. The evidence is undeniable. Something major happened to this playing style. So, our investigation is going to start with the most fundamental piece of equipment in the entire game. Our first suspect, the ball itself. You wouldn't think this tiny little sphere could be the culprit, but its evolution has completely reshaped the physics of the sport. You see, the International Table Tennis Federation made 2 really monumental changes. First, back in 2000, the ball got bigger, from 38 to 40 millimeters. The idea was to slow the game down for TV. Then, in 2014, the material itself was switched from the old-school celluloid to a harder, non-flammable plastic. And these 2 changes were a direct assault on the chopper's main weapon. The new plastic ball is harder, it's less elastic, and that reduces what's called dwell time. That's the tiny fraction of a second the ball sits on the racket. For a chopper, dwell time is everything. It's how they dig into the ball to create that massive backspin. With less dwell time and a ball that just doesn't hold spin as well, their number 1 weapon was systematically weakened. Okay, so the ball is one piece of the puzzle, but let's move on to our next suspect, and you'll see how this all starts to build, the rule book. Over the years, several changes, all aimed at making the game more exciting for spectators, had these devastating, probably unintended, consequences for the defensive player.
First up, they shrank the game from 21 points down to 11. That just ripped away the chopper's strategic time to wear an opponent down. Next, they banned the hidden serve, which made the spin way easier for attackers to read. And then they allowed coaching between points, which meant an opponent's coach could just pull out a tablet, instantly analyze a chopper's patterns, and tell their player exactly what to do. So attrition, deception, and rhythm, the 3 pillars of defense, were just knocked down one by one.
All right, on to our final suspect. And honestly, this one might be the most significant of all. A massive and ever-widening technology gap between the tools of attack and the tools of defense.
This quote from our research really just says it all. You could say that over the last couple of decades, the attackers have been given rocket launchers, while the defenders, well, they've had their shields systematically downgraded. It really is like bringing a shield to a gunfight.
So, get this. While attacking rackets were getting supercharged with these new rubbers that create a kind of trampoline effect for the ball, the defender's primary tool, the special rubber they used to reverse spin, was being heavily restricted. In fact, the most effective versions were banned outright. This created a huge power imbalance, giving attackers these weapons that modern defensive equipment just has no answer for.
But just when you think the case is closed, there's a really fascinating twist. Because if the chopper is basically extinct in the men's game, why are these still surviving and in many cases thriving in the women's game? It really all comes down to one thing: raw physical power.
You see, the elite men's game has reached a level of speed and force where players can literally blast the ball through the spin, basically just negating its effect with pure velocity. But in the women's game, where the average speed is just a little bit lower, that small difference allows the chopper's spin tactics and strategic placement to remain super effective. It's the same sport, but it's a completely different physical equation. So, after looking at all the evidence, what's our final conclusion in the case of the vanishing chopper? Was it a murder, or was it just a natural death?
Well, our investigation reveals there wasn't one single assassin. It was, you could say, a death by 1,000 cuts. It was this perfect storm of factors: the ball, the rules, the rackets, and the insane evolution of pure athleticism that all came together to make this style pretty much unsustainable at the highest level of men's competition.
And that's really the most important takeaway here. This wasn't some natural evolution where a better strategy just came along and won. The very foundation of the sport was altered. The physics and the regulations were fundamentally reshaped, and the defensive chopper was the unfortunate casualty of that whole redesign.
And this leaves us with one final, kind of provocative thought. In this relentless push for more speed and more television-friendly action, table tennis has become an amazing showcase of offense, but it really begs the question, what did we lose along the way? In making the game faster, did we inadvertently sacrifice a unique dimension of its artistry and its strategic diversity?